here at Inniswood Metro Gardens today for a bit of a digital nature hike. With the ongoing pandemic, it's not really a good time to get out on sort of guided nature hikes right now, so I'm hoping I can give you a digital version of that, and you'll be able to either follow along when you come here to hike yourself, remaining 6 feet away from everybody else, or you can enjoy it from the comfort of home. I'm going to have a map right up there in that corner, so feel free to follow the track of our hike as we go. Let's see what we can find.
Inniswood is known for its beautiful gardens, and though many of the plants in these gardens are exotic ornamental plants, they are native trees spread throughout the property that are actually labeled to help you brush up on your tree identification skills. Not to mention, the majority of the property is actually beautifully preserved native forest habitat.
You can hear the blue jays over there. There you go. And blue jays have a pretty impressive repertoire, like a lot of their relatives, crows and jays. They're able to produce a lot of different vocal sounds, and so you can learn the classic kind of jay call that's really harsh, but they have all these very sweet, very softer calls that they'll do that a lot of people might not recognize as being a blue jay. Blue jays are really, really intelligent too. Very cool bird. Well, let's check this out here. So right down here, we have one of our early spring wildflowers, Spring Beauty. And it's a very kind of small, dainty wildflower. It has these kind of grass blade-like leaves. And the little flower is usually white or pinkish with just streaks of pink coming out from the center. But that's a great one to look for in almost any forest here in central Ohio or throughout a lot of the eastern United States. One of my favorites, and a really early one too.
Spring cress is another early season wildflower you can look for here in Inniswood. It thrives in the moist soils found throughout these forests.
I have a list of plants and trees that if I could have a nice natural potpourri that I would make would be on that, and this is one of them. This is towards the top of the list. This is spicebush, and it doesn't look like much right now because it's not leafed out yet, but it's got buds. It's starting to bud out. And so spicebush is one of our most common native sort of mid-level shrubs here in a forest like this. But when this leaves out, the leaves will be very fragrant. In fact, the stems are very fragrant. Every part of it's very fragrant. If you just scratch it a little or crunch a leaf up in your fingers, you can smell the beautiful smell where it gets its name. But it's definitely one of my favorites, and it seems to be doing really well, pretty common in this woods. It's actually, in my mind, the sign of a really healthy woods because a lot of the invasive bushes that come in crowd out spicebush. So it's often one of the first things to go when an invasive shrub moves into a woods. So a good, healthy mid-story of spicebush, that's a good sign. All right, so one of my favorite wildflowers is right over here. If you can see it, it's right there. Kind of hard to spot. Ooh. But that's trout lily, and trout lily is a beautiful little flower. The leaves of it sometimes carpet parts of the forest. They have an almost dappled water look to them. The leaves are really pretty, and there's both a yellow and a white species. The ones I'm seeing here are all the yellow species, but both very, very pretty flowers, out for a pretty short amount of time. So if you happen to be here during the right time, really enjoy that because they don't last very long. But one of the prettiest spring woodland wildflowers you'll see here. So there's 1, 2, 3 gray squirrels just right there. We just passed 2 or 3 others. I can hear a couple more on that. There's squirrels everywhere. And this is just one example of how spring really gets things going. These squirrels, they're out foraging. They're really trying to get a bunch of food. You know, winter is kind of is the rough time. And once they're through that, spring, new life starts coming up, new plants start coming up, new food becomes available, other creatures start becoming active. Everything's out. Spring is just an incredible time to be out and to be watching nature. I don't know if you can hear it or not. It's probably right there. That call is a good one to memorize because it's a bird that's very common year-round here in central Ohio throughout a lot of the eastern United States. It's a tufted titmouse, and the best way to remember it, your mnemonic device, can be Peter, Peter, Peter. There you go. Peter, Peter, Peter. That's the tufted titmouse's song. Really cool, cute little bird. This nice little rocky kind of limestone stream flowing through here. Looks like a good place for a lot of wildlife to come through. I hear a lot of birds moving along this corridor. There's actually a bluebird chattering right behind me. I don't know if you can hear it or not. Probably go here in a second. There it was. Kind of has a, bluebirds have a kind of sweet mumbling raspy call, kind of very cute, very soft a lot of the times. I really like that call.
Painted turtles in this pond have just woken up from their long winter's nap and can be seen poking their heads in and out of the duckweed and basking along the rocks and logs near shore. You get a good look at them, look out for the bright reds and yellows that adorn their neck, head, and arms. It's not hard to imagine where they get their name from. Though these turtles may seem curious or even a little tame at times, remember, they are wild animals and this is their natural habitat, and they're best left there. Turtles live a long, long time and are very, very messy pets anyway. If you watch carefully, you may even spot some very, very tiny turtles that could be waking up to their first or second spring here.
So right here, just next to this little kind of footpath that crosses this little pond, we've got these cute little tadpoles hanging out right, oh, one just kind of swam away from me a little bit there, but there's a bunch of these little tadpoles sitting in here. Well, not so little tadpoles. These are among the largest tadpoles in Ohio. They look to be green frog tadpoles. Green frog and bullfrog tadpoles look really similar, and they both share having to overwinter as larvae, as tadpoles. And what I mean by that is a lot of frogs will breed in ponds that dry up in the late summer because their tadpoles grow into frogs before it dries. But bullfrogs and green frogs have at least 1 or 2 years where they actually have to stay in the pond as tadpoles, and as such they can only breed in permanent waters. So that actually tells me that this little pond is permanent, which I'm sure if you spend a little bit of time here you'd probably find out, but seeing these tadpoles in here tells you for sure. But they seem to be thriving here. There's not a whole lot else other than these tadpoles in here. Lots of good algae growing on stuff for food. This seems like a really good place to end our hike today. This little unassuming pond just seems like any old pond you'd find at any park. It's up against all these mowed lawns, a nice little boardwalk that goes by it, but this pond hosts a really special amphibian, and it's really important for that amphibian. There are maybe more than 100 spotted salamander egg masses in this pond, and if you walked up and looked in, you might see them, these big jelly masses. They're everywhere, and you probably wouldn't ever know that these things existed other than that. They're these big, beautifully colored salamanders. They live most of their life under the ground, and they move into this pond in the spring to lay their eggs, and then they move back. They're only in here for a week or two, maybe less, and then they're under the ground for the rest of the year. But this little pond gives you a glimpse into their secretive life. And that's what I think is a good sort of, that encapsulates what Ennis Woods is. It's a glimpse into the more secretive and wild lives of nature. And it's surrounded by something that is distinctly not wild, suburbia and urbanized areas. But it's very accessible. Anybody can come out here and see these little slices of nature. So I hope you've enjoyed our journey into this today, and I hope you join me next time.